Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into a very special edition of the ATU Sports Corner. This is March Madness. It's finally here. It is also St. Patrick's Day, so I hope you're feeling lucky. We are going to be breaking down each part of the bracket one by one. We are going to be starting out with Caden breaking down the West. How excited are you, Caden?
I don't think I could be more excited. There's not a better time in sports. Genuinely, there's not a better time in sports than March Madness, and I think this year some of these matchups, they're more intriguing than we've had in years past. I couldn't be more excited.
All right, well, we are going to be breaking down each side of the bracket one by one. Caden will be going over his picks for two of them. I will be going over my picks for two, and we are going to start with Caden in the West. So let's show us the bracket. We're going to start off with a little bit of a gimme, I'd like to think. Arizona versus the LIU Sharks. Fins up, as always, but, you know.
They're a fan favorite. People love the Sharks. I mean, I've heard endless talks on TikTok, Instagram about LIU. People love them, but I just can't. I can't do it. Arizona, I think they might be the one to win my tournament. Arizona's great, and they really don't have too bad of a path, in my opinion, to get there. Their toughest competition, if they get there, potentially will be Arkansas in the Sweet 16. So they really have a good chance. And number one seeds are 158-2 against 16 seeds. So it's really not looking good for Long Island as much as I want to pick them. If they had maybe not Arizona, they could have a chance. But unfortunately, I'm going to have to go with Arizona. They have Big 12 Player of the Year Jaden Bradley, Cole Pete, Braden Burries. He had a rough Big 12 tournament, in my opinion, but it's just going to be hard to keep up.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that pick. So we will move on to the second matchup here in the West, and that is a little bit more of a harder game to pick, I'd like to think. This is going to be Villanova versus Utah State.
Yeah, this is Villanova's first time back in the tourney since Jay Wright was the head coach. This is a big tournament for them in general. Of course, that's been some years since Jay Wright was coaching there. But Utah State comes from a really good conference, in my opinion, and for them to win that conference, it's weaker than years previous, but it's still really good. They come in at 28-6. They're 15-5 overall, and they're led by MJ Collins Jr., who averages over 17 points per game, and they're shooting 49.8% from the field as a team, and that's what you want when it comes to tournament time. I think Villanova has a decent squad, but I think this 8-9 matchup, it could go either way. Both teams are 15-5 in their respective conferences, but I got to go with the Aggies.
Yeah, I think that backcourt duo for the Aggies and MJ Collins and Mason Falsev will be the key in this one. I really like Villanova's big man Duke Brennan, but at the end of the day, I think that guard play is king in March, and I think having probably the two best guards in this game will be absolutely massive for Utah State.
Yeah, another big stat talking about Duke Brennan. Villanova is 12-2 when he logs a double-double. So if Utah State, they're going to have to keep him off the board. It's kind of a Willy Wonka stat. You can kind of pull that either way because, I mean, having a double-double really doesn't tie into true team win or loss, but that's an interesting stat. They're 12-2.
A Willy Wonka stat?
I mean, how much is the difference between him having 9 and 10 rebounds could be potentially the difference between them being 12-2 or 14-10. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
no, it's a big stat. I've just never heard the term Willy Wonka.
That's just
stat.
the first thing that came to my mind. You know, I think it's a fun stat. It's just
it's
interesting.
Well, let's talk about a fun game right here. I think this might be the most fun game of the first round. Two super high-powered offenses. The first 5-12 matchup, Wisconsin and High Point.
Yeah, you talk about high-powered offenses. I can't imagine the final score for this game. I mean, it's going to be endless buckets. They're going to be filling it up on both sides of the court. Wisconsin comes in at 24-10, 14-6 in their conference. High Point 30-4. They have some really good scores, of course. They've kind of been the hot talk of the tournament before it started because of Chase Johnston with his 3-point to 2-point ratio. He really didn't play that much, so he averages 6 points per game. But they have other guys that score the ball at a high level, and Terry Anderson and Rob Martin. They both average over 15 points per game. And Wisconsin has an even better duo in John Blackwell and Nick Boyd. They're going to be tough to stop, especially for High Point. Offense is going to be endless. But every year, it feels like there's a 12 seed that's going to knock off a 5, and I think High Point's going to do it this year.
Wow, that's interesting because Wisconsin has been one of the hottest teams in the country over these last few weeks. They've played a lot of great games, especially with that backcourt duo of Blackwell and Boyd. They beat a lot of really good teams. They got Illinois, Purdue on the road in that run. I don't think I can agree with you on that one. I think that the way Wisconsin is playing right now, as much as I do like High Point, I have a hard time seeing them go down in the first round.
I think it's just going to be whoever, I mean, of course, it's the game of basketball, whoever misses more, but I mean, it's just going to be endless scoring. I mean, High Point averages 90 points per game. They're going to be filling it up. So is John Blackwell and Nick Boyd. I think they can keep the scoring going for 40 minutes.
I don't disagree, but I don't know if that defense is going to be able to do anything to stop them. But speaking of defenses, Arkansas and Hawaii is a very interesting defensive dynamic. If you're not aware, Hawaii plays a very interesting style of defense, very drop coverage heavy. They do not help hardly at all. And I think that is a very interesting matchup for Arkansas and specifically Darius Acuff.
I was just about to get, there's going to be a man that whenever they saw the matchup of Hawaii, I'm sure Calipari and Acuff, they just got to salivating. I mean, Acuff, I don't want to make a prediction on how much he's going to score in this game. It's going to be a lot. And so is Malik Thomas. He can work one-on-one as well. I think the Hogs offense, they're not great defensively. They seem to have a lot of give up in them sometimes whenever – they play so hard on offense that when it comes to defense, sometimes the effort isn't fully there. But I don't think it's going to matter, especially with this interesting Hawaii defense. I think Acuff is going to have a huge game. I don't think the Hogs are going to struggle too much in this one.
Yeah, unfortunately, I like to agree with what you're saying. As much as I actually do like this Hawaii team, they're a team I've really enjoyed watching this year, and I think I was thinking about taking to win a game or two in the tournament before the bracket came out. I think this is just an absolutely brutal draw for them. Just a really bad styles clash for the way they play. They like to force long twos and difficult shots. That is exactly the game star point guard Darius Acuff wants to play. And I don't think it's going to mesh well with that defense. Isaac Johnson's a really good big man. I think he can move the feet a little bit. Not that well.
Yeah, I don't think they could have got – I mean, there's not very many – ISO players in college basketball this year that I think are better than Darius Acuff, and that is the kryptonite of this Hawaii team. I don't think they could have probably gotten a worse matchup for a 4 seed.
Yeah, tough draw there for them. But we will move on to BYU, who does not know who their draw is going to be. They have a first 4 game coming up to decide that. I believe that is the NC State and Texas game decides who will play them. First of all, what do you think is going to happen in that first 4 game, Caden?
This is not necessarily a huge part of my bracket, but I think if Texas wins this game, if they beat Will Wade's, it's his first year at NC State, if they win this one, I think they could knock off BYU purely because Richie Saunders is out. I think that injury, that's 18 points a game that they're missing. They've still played okay without him, but I think that's going to be a big loss, especially against a team like Texas, who is offensive heavy. They're averaging 84 points per game in the SEC, and they had a really high strength of schedule this year. Tremont Mark, who used to be at Arkansas, scores the ball at a very high level, and so does Dalen Swain. He's averaging almost 18 points per game. I think Texas has a great chance to win this game against NC State, and if they do that, I think they could beat BYU. But with that game undecided, for this bracket, for the purposes of this bracket, I'm going to take BYU to win. I love A.J. DeBonsta. I think he's amazing. I don't think he's the best player in college basketball personally, but he's definitely top 3. And I think if they get the NC State matchup, they win. If they get the Texas matchup, I like the Longhorns.
You know, an interesting wrinkle with this first 4 matchup is that obviously they do play on that Tuesday night, but whenever they finish that game, they're going to hop directly onto a plane from Dayton to fly all the way to Portland, Oregon. That is not a fun travel to make. I really worry about the toll that will take on the players, and I just have a really hard time seeing either first 4 team taking down BYU because of that, despite the fact that Richie Saunders is not going to play. I love Richie Saunders. He's one of my favorite players in college basketball. Well, I guess was now, but I have a hard time seeing them overcome that.
And one of the weirdest things, speaking about that draw to Portland, is especially in the game previous that we just talked about, Arkansas. They're going to Portland, and one of the set places for the West is Oklahoma City. Coach Cowell's talking about that, how they should have gotten a draw to Oklahoma City. It's 2 hours away. Instead, they're having to travel ages away. He said he thought it was out of the country.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a bad draw in that. I think, like you said, that travel is going to be rough, and it's going to be a short turnover time from this Tuesday game. It's going to be interesting.
Well, a team that does not have to travel far is the Gonzaga Bulldogs. They are going just down the road to Portland to take on Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State, one of the weirder stories in college basketball this year was Simeon Cottle being suspended for gambling reasons. You got anything on this one?
If he was still playing, I might root for Kennesaw State, but he's not. So I'm going to have to take the Bulldogs. Graham Ike, he's phenomenal. Braden Huff is set to be out for this first weekend. I think he will return for the Sweet 16 if Gonzaga makes it there. I think they could. But that's going to be a tough game. I don't think Gonzaga is going to lose. Of course, they're 30-3. They've had a really good season. They've had a couple Final Four runs, but they've never finished in the tournament. They've never pulled all the way through to a championship finish. I don't think it's going to happen this year either, but I do think they pick up a win against Kennesaw State.
Yeah, I think Gonzaga is just going to be too much, especially with, pretty much what will probably be a home court advantage there in Portland. But we will move on to a team that also might have a little bit of a home court advantage, and that's Missouri, who gets the Miami Hurricanes in St. Louis, Missouri. Do you think that's going to play a role in this one?
You know, I think it very well could. And I think Missouri is going to win this game. I like the Tigers a lot. I think they have a really good team. I think Mark Mitchell is one of the better players in the SEC, and he doesn't really get a whole lot of credit for it. He's averaging over 18 points and 5 rebounds a game. He's been phenomenal for Missouri all of his time there. Now, that's not to shame or disregard the Hurricanes. They have Malik Reneau, who averages over 18 points per game, and Trey Donaldson, who's averaging 16 and a half. The Hurricanes have had a very good year. That's a well-deserved 7 seed, in my opinion. And 61.3% of matchups are won by 7 seeds. I don't think that's going to fall in favor of Miami in this matchup. Both teams have really good offense. They both average about 80 points per game. But I think Mark Mitchell is going to lead this Missouri team to an upset victory here.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, Caden. I am a really big fan of what Miami has done this year, what Coach Lucas has done in just his first year with the program taking over for Jim Larinaga. But I think the St. Louis factor, Missouri being so close to home, I think it's going to be really difficult for Miami to overcome. And Missouri has a lot of depth on that team. They can score from a lot of different places. I think it's going to be too much. But the last first-round matchup will be Purdue and Queens. I think I know where you're going to go with this one.
I think I would – now, okay, let me say this. If Queens would have lost in that overtime game to UCA, now this is completely biased because we are 45 minutes away from UCA, I would have picked the Bears to win this game. And purely, I don't trust Purdue. I've said that many times on this show. Purdue will not make it past my Sweet 16. And I know that's your championship pick.
Well, they were my preseason championship pick. I'm going to – a little bit of a spoiler. It won't stay the same.
Preseason championship. Purdue shocked me in that Big Ten tournament. Coming from a 7 seed all the way to win, beat Michigan fairly easily. They played great. But I just don't think the Boilermakers are going to have a phenomenal tournament. But they are going to beat Queens, and I don't think it's going to be particularly close.
Yeah, maybe Braden Smith just needed to change his number to get the Boilermakers going in the right direction. But that is the last game of the first round in the West, so we will move all the way back up to the top for Arizona versus Utah State.
Again, I think this could be a very good game. But Arizona is a very strong 1 seed. All the 1 seeds this year, of course, as they should be, they're very good. They can all compete at a very high level. They have that big 3 of Koa Pete, Braden Burries, Jaden Bradley. They're all phenomenal. I think the Wildcats, I think they're going to beat the Aggies, and I don't think it's going to be too close.
Yeah, once again, I think that this is just a team that has offense that can come from too many places for the Aggies to handle. The Aggies, their offense really only runs for those 2 guards. And for Arizona, they have like 8 guys who they can rely on night in, night out to get a bucket. And I don't really trust that for Utah State moving forward. But next off in the second round, we're going to have High Point, after they pulled off the upset, facing off against Arkansas. Probably what would be another high-scoring game here.
This would definitely be high-scoring, and I think that's going to be the end of the road for High Point. They picked up a very great upset against Wisconsin. It's going to happen. I'm very confident in that. But I think the Hogs pick up a great win. I think Darius Acuff continues to dominate. John Calipari gets another Sweet 16 team, and I think they have a tough matchup against Arizona.
Yeah, if this is the way the bracket falls, I feel like Darius Acuff might end up scoring like 70 points in these first 2 games. The way he's been playing lately, combined with the, I don't want to say lack of defense, but the high-scoring nature that these games, I believe, would lead to. I think that he will score at a very high clip and move the Hogs on as well. But the next matchup, we got a little West Coast battle. BYU and Gonzaga, former West Coast Conference foes, facing off here in the second round.
Yeah, I'm still unsure on BYU making it to this game. I think Texas will make it here if they beat NC State, like I said, but I think Gonzaga beats whoever makes it to this matchup. Braden Huff will still be out for this game, supposedly, but Graham Ike can carry the boats the rest of the way. I think Gonzaga, I think they have another Sweet 16 appearance, and I think they could potentially push to the Elite Eight, and it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse here, but I feel like, once again, this is another case where it's just a team that has a lot of scores that they can rely on versus a team that does not. BYU, outside of Rob Wright and A.J. DeBanston now, there's really not anyone who they can rely on. But, I mean, for Gonzaga, Adam Miller, Fogle, St. Supre, Grant Foster, Huff, and Ike, like you mentioned, all of those guys score the basketball very well. They don't really need to a lot of times, but they're all very capable of it. And I think that would be too much for BYU to defend. So we will move on to the final matchup of the second round here. Mizzou and Purdue in St. Louis.
Ooh, this is. I'm excited for this game if it falls to this. It's going to be great basketball. A lot of these games are going to be great. For sure, this one. I don't know if Mizzou can hang with Purdue if they get to this round of 32 game. I would love to see a 7 seed make it to the Sweet 16 in this scenario. But I think Purdue is really good, and I think Mizzou is really good too. They have a great ball club. They have a lot of scores. And that St. Louis, it's gonna be tough in St. Louis especially. But I think Purdue can pick up another big win, and they'll also. This is gonna be all the favorites, but I think Purdue's gonna advance to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, it can feel a little boring whenever you get 1, 2, 3, 4, but I don't disagree with any of these picks. I do think that Purdue is the overwhelming favorite to make it out of those 4 teams. And, I mean, like you said, I just don't think that there's really – I mean, I'm beating a dead horse here. They have a bunch of guys who can score. And Mizzou, I mean, Mark Mitchell, and then there's some other guys who sometimes get into it. But, I mean, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, I feel like hasn't even really played as well as he could the last month or so. And, I mean, Oscar Clough and Trey Kaufman are always going to give you something in the paint scoring-wise. So I just have a hard time seeing Mizzou keep up in that facet, despite the fact that they'll probably have a decent crowd advantage. So we're going to move on to the Sweet 16. The 1-4 matchup is Arizona versus Arkansas, 2 teams that like to call themselves the U of A. I guess we'll decide who's really the U of A right here.
And I think it's gonna be Arizona. From Arkansas, it's hard to say. I'm not a Hogs fan though. Don't get that messed up. I'm not a Hogs fan. But anyway,
we don't do bias on this show.
Yeah, no bias, totally. The Hogs, anyway, they're great. Darius Acuff is phenomenal. Him and Malik Thomas, they're a 1-2 punch, but they're not going to be able to keep up with the depth of Arizona. It's a constant theme on the show today is that depth, and it's going to play in this tournament big time. I mean, we haven't even gotten to guys for Arizona like Del Orso, who has had some huge games this year. He can light it up from beyond the arc at any time. Krivas is great for him. Just the whole team for Arizona, from top to bottom, they can play great basketball. I think it's going to be too much for the 7-man rotation for Arkansas.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that if there is any guard out there who can slow down Darius Acuff, Jaden Bradley might be that guy. Similar builds with them. Jaden Bradley very good on both ends of the floor. And I just think if there's a guy who can neutralize him, especially with the bigs they have inside who defend the rim very well, I think he can play very freely and be able to defend Acuff tight on the perimeter and not allow him to get to those mid-range shots he loves to take. And even those threes he's been jacking up lately, good Lord, has he made some crazy
ones.
From
the corner where he was just
absolutely ridiculous.
Falling out of bounds. Acuff is phenomenal.
He's been especially phenomenal these last few weeks. But we will move on to the final game of the Sweet 16 in the West, Gonzaga and Purdue. Another chalk matchup, but is there anything that sticks out to you in this one?
I think the main thing that's going to stick out, I said this before, Braden Huff will be back. Gonzaga will be fully healthy. Purdue, I cannot trust you in the tournament. I can't. They've never done me good in a bracket. They've never done me good. My old basketball coach, he didn't call them Purdue, he called them Perdon't. Because they don't do it. They don't. So I'm going to have to take Gonzaga. They're also not very trustworthy. Both these teams, they're always highly seeded, but have never necessarily panned out to a championship game. But if I had to pick one, necessarily because of the easier road, I think I'm going to take Gonzaga.
You know, this is a game I really struggled with on my bracket. there's a lot of similar themes with these teams, like you said, but I think for me, the backcourt duo of Braden Smith and Fletcher Loyer, I think just gives me the edge to Purdue in this one. So, we now have our Elite Eight matchup, the final game to see who gets the spot in the Final Four. Once again, two West Coast teams playing for the title of the West, Arizona versus Gonzaga.
I gotta rock with Arizona. It's not fun taking a 1 seed all the way, but they're a 1 seed for a reason. They're 32-2. I think they've probably been the best team in college basketball all year. Really, them and Duke. I don't think Florida is necessarily up there in the ranks with them. So I think Arizona and Duke, I think they're the two best in basketball. And I think Arizona, I think they win this game. And that's just playing it safe. When it comes to making brackets, sometimes you just want to play it safe, make sure you get surefire points. And I think Arizona is a fairly safe bet to make it to the Final Four.
Yeah, I also agree that they're a safe bet. I will say if there is anything to be concerned about with this Arizona team, they do rely pretty heavily on freshman production. Braden Burries is their leading scorer, Koa Pete right behind him, and they even have some role guys who are freshmen. I could see that maybe showing a little bit of inexperience against a very experienced team in Gonzaga. Maybe that could be an issue, but I agree that I just think that the Wildcats are too much. But that is all we have for the West. Tune in to our next couple videos for the rest of the bracket, and we will see you in those ones.